I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, October 28th. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. Hope everybody is excited for today's sports equinox. Doesn't happen that often, but all four of the major American sports have games today. We're going to talk about all of the action from over the weekend, winners and losers from the NFL and college football. Of course, we're going to talk about the World Series, the Dodgers taking a 2-0 lead, and we're going to preview Monday Night Football as well as dipping our toes into a little bit of early season NBA. But before we get into any of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, October 28th. But like I was saying, in this segment, we are going to start off our show talking all about the winners and losers from a crazy week in NFL football. As always, we have 5 winners and 5 losers, and we're going to just run through the 5 losers real quick. Starting at number 5 for the losers, it's the Dallas Cowboys with the loss on Sunday Night Football, one where arguably they looked their best that they had all season long against a 49ers team that was injured and struggling. They still found a way to lose it at the end. That was a disastrous third quarter. The 49ers only could play football in that third quarter for some reason, and they still end up losing by a relatively large margin. CeeDee Lamb is able to come in and salvage a lot of this game, which puts you at the number 5 loser, but where you sit right now at 3-4, you currently sit at 12th out of 16 in your conference. That is not where the Cowboys want to be. It is not a good look for them. They've paid Dak all this money. There's so much dysfunction coming in from the top and the bottom of that organization. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen from here, but the Cowboys are the number 5 loser of the week. Sitting at number 4, it's Tua. He makes his triumphant return to football after suffering another scary-looking concussion, and he didn't get hurt. So that might want to make you put him in a winner, but they lose to the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals, who now, don't look, have won a couple games in a row, and they are just outside of their division lead in the NFC West. This is an Arizona Cardinals team that has finally, especially in this game, started to use their weapon in Marvin Harrison Jr. He arguably had his best game. You can talk about his week 2 performance where he went off for 2 touchdowns in the first quarter and then didn't touch the ball. But I thought overall this was the most complete performance by Marvin Harrison Jr. on his early career. That shows a lot for both the Dolphins and the Cardinals. First of all, that Dolphins defense has been beaten just up and down. They don't really have a full roster there. They are the way they're paying people. They think they're competing for something. They finally get healthy. They're 1-2 with a fully healthy roster, right? 1-2 with that fully healthy Tua Tagovailoa back there. And also, this team shouldn't be this bad without Tua. We've seen them be competitive, a very similar iteration of this team with Skylar Thompson. There's no reason why this team should have been arguably the worst in the league without Tua. But here we sit now. They're our number 4 losers. Our number 3 loser is just Anthony Richardson. Overall, the Colts played a solid game of football. Their defense came up with a couple of big stops, especially down the stretch, turning the ball over on the Texans. The Texans, who probably should have won that game by more, but Anthony Richardson had his fair share of issues in this game. Obviously, starting in the beginning where he finished his first half stats 2 for 15. 2 for 15 for 89 yards. One of those was a 69-yard touchdown, of course. But still, you cannot be a serious NFL quarterback if you're putting up stat lines like that. As much as I want to believe in Anthony Richardson, as much as I want Anthony Richardson to be that guy, I cannot continue to look at him and say, this is a guy who I think can turn it around. He needs a lot of help, and this was the same issues that we saw at Florida. He's a ridiculous athlete. If you give him a play, he's going to take it, but he makes these mental mistakes, makes bad decisions, is inaccurate with the ball. These are things that need to be fixed as soon as possible. And for all intents and purposes, this is still his rookie season. But it's not where you want to be if you're a Colts fan. They're only 4-4. They're not completely out of it yet. This is a team that can still technically find a way to the playoffs, especially with how mid the middle of the AFC has been. They're not out of it, but they need Anthony Richardson to step up, play like he did in week 1. Even that would be a far cry better than what he's been doing these last couple of weeks since he returned from injury. They need that Anthony Richardson back, and they need it back now. Excuse me. Our number 2 loser, it's Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. I've said for about the last 3 or 4 weeks, it has been a must-win for this New York Jets team. This is a Jets team that now is 2-6, same record as the Patriots. Their last win came all the way against the Patriots with Jacoby Brissett starting. Jacoby Brissett comes back into this game at about halftime. It doesn't matter. He leads a comeback drive against this Jets team that just added a piece to their defense. Their offense continues to be embarrassingly ineffective. This Jets team cannot move the ball when it needs to move the ball. I cannot take this Jets team seriously anymore. They've made 3 or 4 desperation moves already. They are out of moves, and there's nothing to salvage from this season anymore. The Jets team is just done, and there isn't a future. This is a team that sold everything for the last year or two of Aaron Rodgers, and it's just not working. There's nothing this Jets team can do right now. They're a number 2 loser, and that leads to the number 1 loser. If it was any other situation, if anything else had happened this week, the Jets would have been the number 1 loser. But of course, we had maybe one of the wildest plays I have ever seen on a football field, leading to our number 1 loser being Tyreek Stevenson, the cornerback for the Chicago Bears. Now, of course, the main reason he's up here at number 1 is because of the Hail Mary play, right? Taunting the Commanders fans up 3 with a Hail Mary live play in action, and he is taunting the fans. Then he proceeds to run over, not cover his man. Matt Eberflus says in a press conference today, he was supposed to go and cover Noah Brown in the back of the end zone. He tips it up to Noah Brown at the end instead, and the Commanders win one of the most improbable victories I have ever seen. It's not only that, though. He had a pretty bad game overall. For a Bears defense that's one of the better ones in the league, you can say a lot of things about how the Bears played that football game. It was not a good game. It was not a very well-played game for the Bears. But Tyreek Stevenson also gave up a massive play to Terry McLaurin earlier. Gave up a 15-yard penalty with a helmet-to-helmet late hit on Terry McLaurin that put them, the Commanders, in field goal range. This was just an awful game by Tyreek Stevenson, and because of that, and of course all of the press surrounding him for what was maybe the worst play on a football field at that Hail Mary, he is the number 1 loser of the week. But let me know what you think. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we turn our attention over to the winners. The winners of the NFL are coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, October 28th. If you are just tuning in, we just went over the losers of the NFL. In this segment, we turn our attentions to the winners of this Week 8 NFL slate. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, October 28th. But like I was saying, in this segment, we're going to finish up our winners and losers list, keeping on with the winners side of things, talking a little bit about what a crazy week in the NFL it is. As always, 5 winners for this week 8 in the NFL, and we're going to start off at number 5. Our number 5 winner of the week is Bo Nix. Bo Nix quietly putting together one of the best months for a quarterback in the NFL right now. I have been very loudly a Bo Nix hater on this show, on this podcast. I'm still not going to retract my statement. He has done it against some of maybe the worst competition in the NFL. You talk about his last 4 matchups where by the numbers, by the stats, he's been one of the best in the entire league. He goes up against the Panthers, one of the worst defenses in the league, the Saints, one of the worst defenses in the league, the Chargers, who they lose to, has a solid defense but still not one of the best, and the Raiders. And if you want to continue, who also have one of the worst defenses in the league, if you want to stretch it back a little further, the Jets and the Bucks are the 2 wins that came before that. Both of those teams have their own struggles, but you want to talk about when he's been statistically dominant, it's just those last 4, 3 of them coming against some of the worst teams in the league. That being said, he has looked competent. He's looked really, really good down the stretch of this season, in the middle point here, these last 4 games, leading the NFL in a lot of very important stats. And I want to give him his flowers as a rookie because he's not getting a lot of the talk centered around guys like Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, a lot of the wide receivers that are getting a lot of love. Bo Nix is not getting that love. And as much as I am not a big fan of him as like a quality NFL quarterback, what he's been able to do as a replacement level guy is kind of how I see him, as like a Jimmy G level guy, someone that as long as they're not turning the ball over and have the weapons, they'll be fine. He is someone that deserves a little bit more respect. He had probably his best game of his career. It was very exciting to see, honestly. This was something that I'd been waiting on. Some of his deep balls looked really good. He hadn't looked that good all season long, but Bo Nix is the number 5 winner. Our number 4 winner of the week is, of course, the tight ends on National Tight End Day. The tight ends combined for by far their best week of the season. It had been a down year for tight ends all across the league. You had guys like Cade Otton, Kyle Pitts score twice, George Kittle going off on Sunday Night Football. The yards that were put up by tight ends this week were insane. The amount of stats that tight ends put up, it was by far their best week. Almost everyone found the end zone. Evan Ingram with a near overtime sending touchdown down the stretch. Tyler Kraft got a touchdown in that game as well. This has been just a great week for tight ends. Obviously, it's a coincidence, maybe not, that it all took place on National Tight End Day, but still, an awesome week for the tight ends of the NFL. If they can continue to play like this, maybe we can stop talking about, fantasy-wise, the end of tight ends. But they are our number 4 winner of the week. Our number 3 winner of the week this week goes to none other than the Detroit Lions. And a little more specifically than the Detroit Lions, I want to give it to Khalif Raymond and the return game specifically. What they were able to do on the return game made that box score look like a joke. The Lions put up 52 points. Again, against a not very good team in the Titans, but still 52 points is an accomplishment in itself. Special teams played a large role in that. Khalif Raymond and that special teams unit had 200 plus yards on returns. Also a touchdown, of course. Perfect in the kicking game from Jake Bates, as he continues to be all season. Jared Goff threw for less than 100 yards in this game. Threw for 3 touchdowns. You had a David Montgomery touchdown, throw, and run. Jahmyr Gibbs on 11 carries had 130 yards. You look at this box score and you say, oh my goodness, how did they score this many points? They barely put up 200 yards. They only ran about 40 offensive plays. This is a ridiculous stat line. And then you look at the special teams, how they were able to carve up the Titans in that third unit that people forget about a lot of times. That especially gets the win. 52 more points for the Lions. They continue to dominate every single team they face so far this season. This is a really fun team. The Lions special teams and the Lions as a whole are the number 3 winner of the week. The number 2 winner is Jaden Daniels. I kind of touched a little bit on that Commanders Hail Mary that took place, one of the wildest plays that I have ever seen, not only because it's a Hail Mary that only happens so often, but the way he was able to set up that play, everything leading up to it, the way Jaden Daniels toughed out a rib injury that forced him to sit out for 3 out of 4 practices of the week. Did not think he was going to play. The way that defense really stepped up against a Bears offense that has continually been improving. Aside from the one big run that they gave up to DeAndre Swift down the sideline, that defense really shut them down. And more specifically, the secondary really shut them down, which is something that all season long I have been on the Commanders about. They go out there and they shut down a Caleb Williams-led offense that has just, again, continued to get better and better and better every single week of the season, and they just ran into a Commanders brick wall, and it was not enough to get through. There were plenty of bad decisions made by the Bears. We talked a little bit about that in our first segment, in our losers segment, but Jaden Daniels toughing out the injury. Jaden Daniels powering the Commanders to victory, and all that does, and we'll get into it when we do our rookie report later on this week, but it really helps boost his Rookie of the Year case for Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. They're the number 2 winner. And of course, that leads us to the number 1 winner, and it is the city of Cleveland. Jameis Winston comes in, gets a win for the Browns in his first start. The Browns look like a completely different team. They were the only team in the NFL not to score over 20 points through 7 weeks of the NFL season. The only team who had yet to accomplish that. The second Jameis Winston comes in, they almost hit 30 points. That is something that we've been waiting for. Nick Chubb didn't run this offense that much. It was all through the air against a weak Ravens secondary, but what Jameis Winston was able to do with his number 1 weapon being Cedric Tillman is incredibly impressive. He made his fair share of mistakes. The Ravens did not capitalize him. There were 3, maybe 4 interceptions that he could have, maybe should have thrown. Instead, it was a clean day for him. The Ravens blow this game, but the Browns look like they have something. This is the first time all season I can look at that Cleveland team and say, hey, maybe they're not out of it. Maybe they have hope. They beat arguably the hottest team in football at home in a game that was must win for them. And all that this leaves begs the question is, why didn't they make this change sooner? I know you can talk to me about, hey, the money, they're paying him so much money. They're paying Deshaun Watson so much money. They're going to pay him that much money anyway. Why not try and win a football game? Why not try and build a competitive football team since you're going to have to pay him for the next 3 years, regardless of if he plays or not? Hopefully, this wakes up the Cleveland Browns and they can either cut him or let him ride out the rest of his career on that Cleveland bench. We will see. But that Cleveland team looked completely different. Jameis Winston brought the energy, the spark that they needed, and led a game-winning drive for the Cleveland Browns. They get their second win of the season, a much, much needed victory for those Cleveland Browns. But those are our 5 winners of the week. When we come back after this short break, we turn our attention to college football. We talk about the winners and losers from a crazy weekend, another crazy weekend. Chaos reigns once again in the world of college football. We'll talk about the 5 winners and losers coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.